Hi, I'm Pierre, the market lead of our tax and accounting division at Thomson Reuters for MENA. And I'm extremely pleased today to be joined by
Patel. I'm the General Tax Manager of the Al-Futtaim Group, and I work in the Group Tax team.
Thank you very much for being here with us
Pleasure
today.
to be here.
So obviously, as VAT is being introduced in the region, in the GCC, I think Al-Futtaim as a group has been one of the first to actually get ready and kind of embark on that train of VAT. And I think you mentioned you've started about 20 months ago in getting ready for VAT. So could you take us through kind of that journey from 20 months ago up to now? Kind of what are the steps that kind of help you to get there in the
Absolutely. And I like what you said. It is indeed a journey that has taken to where we are at the moment. And as we know, VAT is transactional, so which impacts every single business process, every single system that businesses have, and in every single business transaction, indeed. So what we did was we had a structured approach to how we would be taking the VAT implementation ahead. Through this, we identified three core segments. We through the structure, we said we would have a look at the people, we would look at planning, and we would look at compliance in the organization. With regards to people, we made sure that training, first and foremost, I would say before even training happened, we made sure there were working committees and subcommittees that were formed. And one of the first, in fact, we were quite lucky that we had a buy-in of our shareholders right at the very start, which led us to create a core VAT team represented by each and every single business from the Al-Futtaim Group. And I think that is what drove the energy within the organization, which led us forward. We then started conducting training sessions and webcast. To date, we have conducted more than 70 workshops internally, including webcast, which I think have been very educational and informative for the wider community as well. As part of the training, we also identified the communication levels. What do we need to be communicating internally to our associates, our colleagues at different levels? Now, again, you would have different levels here. You have the supervisory, the leadership, and you would have the business process managers, you would have the business operation managers, and then you would have, right at the end, you would have the front-facing staff, if we can say that. So training levels were identified at each and every single one of these levels. Moving on, there was also communication. There was a communication link formed, or if I can say, how do we channel this to external parties as well? So that was also identified at a very early stage of the VAT project. The next segment that we had embarked on, which was simultaneously done along with the training, was looking at the business impact to the organization. And the business impact obviously would mean that we would ensure we would want to make sure that what the financial impact is, what the impact to the bottom line is to the organization as a whole. And that's very important. What is the cash flow impact to the business? How do we ensure that we have an optimal VAT group in the organization? How do we ensure there is no VAT leakage in the organization as a group as a whole? So through that journey, we have been updating the knowledge base. As you know, the first literally in summer 2016, the Ministry of Finance published their frequently asked questions on VAT, and that was the start of that was the start of a process whereby we thought, okay, this is being taken seriously by the government. Okay, we now need to ensure that we are now keeping track of the timelines that we have internally. So planning also has also involved looking at legal contracts, reviewing legal contracts to ensure that there are VAT clauses in there, which effectively means that you are protecting both the vendors as well as the customer. for a VAT recovery as a whole, and also not making sure that margins are not being impacted, so that the prices are not VAT inclusive. Then comes on the more important bit, which is VAT compliance. Now, I think this is the interesting bit, because when looking at every single transaction in every single business, we actually develop a level of, if I can call it, an intelligence into how business processes are actually being done. And through this process of trying to map transactions with the VAT treatment of them, we were also able to identify business processes that would have required an improvement. So again, VAT not only enabled us to be compliant with the VAT law, but it also helped us to refine the business processes, to refine and improve how we are doing business, and to the general betterment for the group as a whole. Now, VAT compliance processes involve looking at import VAT, input VAT, output VAT. Again, that is from an accounts receivable, accounts payable perspective, and also looking at the tax reporting cycle and how that would be done as well. And through all of these, or rather, once the VAT transactions registers were completed by our businesses, and we had determined, to a certain extent, assumed many positions because the VAT law was not yet out, we were able to speak with the systems vendors and get our systems configured accordingly. And that obviously, as you know, Pierre, that takes a bit of time. And but thankfully, through our project managers in this, which was led by our EIT team, who did a fabulous job at actually ensuring that this whole cycle went smoothly, a whole journey rather went smoothly. We were able to make sure that this first systems integration testing actually took place in the month of October. So that has been done. And we, in fact, have a dedicated a center that we have set up in Rashidiyah, whereby on a daily basis we have 200 to 300 people actually visiting the center on a rota basis to test out the systems, to find out the weaknesses within the systems. And that process has been ongoing. Systems integration testing for the Al-Futtaim group has completed. We are now currently in the user acceptance testing process. And we hope to be able to conduct our first dry run of the systems on the 10th of December. So hopefully that is going to give a few of our colleagues a little bit of time to take a break before the go live date comes into effect. So that has been our journey so far, Pierre.
Yeah, it was kind of an intensive journey, right, with a lot of many steps, but obviously, for a group as big and complex as yours, obviously that kind of thorough exercise has to be taken, right? You cannot leave it to chance. So now, if we look at the other side of the equation, right? So from a market readiness standpoint, obviously there are people like you, and there are also people who haven't really started yet. So what's your view? What do you think will happen on the 1st of January when the kind of two worlds will collide here in the region?
Yes, absolutely. And I think first and foremost, the Federal Tax Authority have done a brilliant job with the workshop they have been attending so far. And any businesses to think that VAT is not going live by the 1st of January 2018 have really not been present in the real world. So now, to answer your question, Pierre, there are two things that is going to make, or rather incentivize businesses to be ready by the 1st of January 2018. Whether they are ready is another question. First and foremost, the FTA has indeed, in their tax procedures law, mentioned the tax penalties that will come, the fines and the penalties that will be levied on the businesses. If that is not incentive enough, then businesses also need to remember that they will lose a competitive, or rather they will be disadvantaged if they are not ready by 1st of Jan 2018. What do I mean by that? It literally is that if they are charged VAT and they are not ready, the systems are not ready, they have not registered for VAT, they would be unable to reclaim that input VAT back from the tax authorities. And that 5% suddenly, from it being a cash flow issue, becomes a margin issue to them. And any businesses operating on thin margins can effectively see the profit margins totally wiped out. What it does, I mean, that is the margin side. But what about businesses such as ours and many other large organizations who have been involved in this process? Well, if certain other businesses are not following suit, then the playing field is not level. So we really do not want, as an organization, to be disadvantaged of being ahead of this game. So at a certain point, that playing field would need to be level. And we certainly hope that through the education and the communication and the tax procedures law, which mentions the penalties and fines, we are certainly hoping that everybody is ready.
Yeah.
Pretty soon.
And I guess if we keep on building up on that question, so how do you think VAT will change the way businesses operate today in this region?
Sure. I think a number of things have happened to date. Firstly, businesses have realized that the level of transparency, or rather of opaqueness that was there earlier, is no longer there. Yeah. Now their transactions are now transparent. Everything that they have been doing is now transparent, which is the general way of doing business in most of the countries. So that is, businesses now need to realize that transparency is not going to be an option. Transparency is now out there. So this is the first one. And secondly, this is a time for businesses to actually optimize and make use of the VAT law to clean up their accounting processes. So this is, we can talk about a financial transformation entirely in a group. How many times have we been hearing about organizations where you have revenues recorded in a different entity? I mean, we rarely hear of that in jurisdictions where you have a fiscal policy in place. And this is a time when businesses would need to make sure that the financial, not just financial records, which is mandatory to be retained, but they will also need to ensure that the financial accounting is correct, in line with not just IFRS, but also ensuring that the revenues are recorded in the right place. Why do I bring in IFRS at this stage, Pierre? Because at the end of the day, when there is an audit by the FTA, your accounting records and your tax records will need to be reconciled. So if different accounting systems, different accounting processes are used for recording different business transactions, that reconciliation process is going to be absolutely, it's going to be it's going to be a nightmare. Agreed.
Indeed. Thank you so much for sharing so much insight with us today. Thank you so much for watching us. I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.